Three frogs sat on a log. One day, one of the frogs decided it wanted to jump off the log and swim in the water. How many frogs are left on the log? You would think there would be two, but in truth there are still three, because the frog that wanted to swim only decided that's what it wanted to do, but never took the time to jump into action. Hi, I'm Jonas Kane, owner of #Positivity, where I work as a positivity consultant, learning experience designer, and facilitator of fascination. The thought experiment you just experienced is of course just a riddle, but it does point to the truth. Because if we're honest with ourselves, how many times have we failed to act on our own decisions and instead remained like that frog on a log? Or perhaps even worse, we failed to act because we couldn't even decide what it was we wanted to do, filled instead with a persistent lack of meaning and purpose. At its core, this is a call for passion, something that stirs our spirit and motivates us into purposeful action. And research shows that the happiest, most positive people in life are those who have a deep sense of purpose, people who are engaged in serving others, empowered with a reason to be alive, and encouraged with the confidence that their life just makes sense. But we don't need psychologists to tell us this. We know this from our own personal experience. Let's try this together. Close your eyes for just a moment. Think of a time in your life when you woke up every day on fire because your mind was set on something that stirred your spirit. Perhaps this is how you're feeling today. If so, that's amazing. Really soak it in. Or perhaps it was some time ago, maybe years ago when your life circumstances were different. Or perhaps it was when you were a teenager or a child and the possibilities seemed endless. Whenever it was, tap into the feeling that this sense of purpose gave you. Take a deep breath in. Really fill your lungs and let it out slowly. One more deep breath in and out. Open your eyes. In our last time together, we talked about how the human mind is wired to focus on problems, on what's wrong with the world before we even consider what's right. But the problem with this tendency is it can prevent us from gaining this valuable sense of purpose. For now, let's level the playing field by setting aside the negativity bias and think about the source of your sense of purpose. Resist any temptation to focus on what might be wrong with it, and instead just focus in on what's right with it. Maybe this sense of purpose has something to do with your career, your family, your health, a hobby, travel, or anything else. If you have a place to write it down, then I encourage you to do so. In just a word or two or three, write down what gives you a deep sense of purpose. Do this now. There are three fundamental elements that inspire, motivate, and drive purpose. And by understanding and applying these elements, we gain insight into our strengths as well as opportunities for growth. Because failure to tend to any one of these three elements can place a barrier between who we are and what we want to do with who we are. These three elements are dream, vision, and action. Here's how they work. Dreaming is important because it allows us to see things not just for how they are and have always been, but for how they could be. And we all have a dream. Think about it. If we got everything we ever wanted, then there'd be nothing left to dream about. The very fact that disappointments exist, that we experience discontent and don't always get what we want, these are the very things that make dreams possible. But the problem with dreaming is that for many people, they stop there, like the frog on a log, and never turn their dreams into a vision. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. reminds us, the difference between a dreamer and a visionary is that a dreamer has his eyes closed, and a visionary has his eyes open. So while a dreamer stays stuck in the clouds, a visionary is someone who comes out of the clouds, identifies the details, the plan to make their dream a reality, and is able to communicate that dream and plan so others can see it too. And yet the same problem that plagues dreamers can plague visionaries too. Because what's the use of having a plan if it's not put into action? We can plan our vision all day, all year, and for a lifetime, but until we act on it, then we're just like that frog on a log. There can be many reasons for why people fail to dream, develop a vision, or fail to take action, and I'm sure you have your own reasons or have at least heard some reasons from others. I've compiled a list of the 4 main obstacles that create a barrier between who we are and who we want to be. And as we go through this list, I encourage you to just take note of the one that you've personally faced. Barrier number 1, we're discouraged by others. People are often quick to point out what's wrong with our plans before they even consider that our life journey has nothing to do with theirs. To overcome this barrier, consider their authority on the subject, and consider what threat your success may be for them. Sometimes advice doesn't come from a place of care, but rather from fear. Barrier 2, we're discouraged by past disappointment. This leads to a fear of failure and lost hope. To overcome this, remember that every day is a new day, and that both past successes and past failures are not accurate indicators of future success or failure. Instead, pursue each day for the opportunities that they hold. Barrier number 3, we settle for average. This barrier is formed before vision even sees the light of day. But consider this. By definition, the average person is average. And when we put in average effort, we will always yield average results. To overcome this, we can lean in, educate ourselves, and apply what we've learned to dream new dreams and see more than others are able or willing to see. When we become the exception in a world of average by doing more than expected and more than others are willing to do, our exceptional efforts open the door for exceptional results. And lastly, barrier number 4, we lack confidence. Even when armed with a clear vision and a well-made plan, if we second-guess ourselves, start comparing ourselves to others, or convince ourselves that we have to be perfect before we jump into action, then we're destined to be that frog on a log. Confident people take calculated risks and are able and willing to adapt to their circumstances. Without confidence, we'll simply never get in the game. But consider this. Olympic gold medals don't go to the best athletes in the world. They go to the best athletes who actually show up to the arena. So the next time you're faced with the confidence barrier, try this tactic. Ask a higher quality question. Instead of asking, "Can I?" ask, "How can I?" "Can I?" contains inherent doubt, undermining our efforts before we even begin. By contrast, "How can I?" assumes that there is a way, and we just need to find it, encouraging us with confidence to begin. For example, looking at this chart, can you guess what number I'm thinking of? At first glance, the answer is probably no. Of course not. There's 16 different numbers here. How the heck are you supposed to know what number I'm thinking of? Yet, when we take a step back and ask the higher quality question, how can you guess what number I'm thinking of? We just might discover some clues. I'll give you 30 seconds to come up with an answer. And time. Did you come up with an answer? When we take a closer look, we see that when we add up each row, they add up to 52. When we add up each column,
they also add up to 52. When we add up both diagonals, they also each add up to 52. And we can take it at least one step further by adding up each of the four corners, and they also add up to 52.
This illustration points to perhaps the most important consideration when fostering a sense of purpose, which is to remember that we are human beings, not human doings. And this suggests that we actually have two purposes: a primary inner purpose which concerns who we are, and a secondary outer purpose which concerns what we do with who we are. But it all starts with the age-old saying, know thyself. When we know and embrace our primary inner purpose, we discover that there are many ways to express this inner purpose in a meaningful way that dances in harmony with who we are. Remember, whether you go horizontal, vertical, sideways, or with the four corners, you can still express your inner self, no matter what it is you find your hands doing and regardless of the circumstances. The happiest and most positive people are those with a deep sense of purpose, people who are engaged in serving others, empowered with a reason to be alive, and encouraged that their life just makes sense. Before we go, I'll leave you with 4 clarity questions that you can ask yourself the next time you need insight on your sense of purpose, and I encourage you to write these down. What do you want to do? What can you do? What must you do? And what will you do? Each question cuts back layers of resistance, empowering you with enhanced clarity, motivation, and resolve. What do you want to do identifies your innermost desires. What can you do identifies your talents and skills while highlighting any gaps in ability. What must you do identifies your responsibilities. And finally, what will you do identifies how bad you want it, so you don't end up like the frog on a log. It's been a joy being here with you today. Until next time, my name is Jonas Kane. Stay positive.